Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this video I will be giving you my ranking of the entire Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Obviously we had a new film drop on Netflix the other day, and yes, I have watched that film and I will be including it in my rankings. So yeah, let's get into it. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise is a franchise that started in 1974 with Tobe Hooper's classic film, and to this day it's considered one of the greatest horror films of all time. And since then, it's spawned numerous sequels, remakes, prequels, all that kind of stuff. But it's arguably, possibly one of the more inconsistent horror franchises in terms of quality and also in terms of continuity. But I think because of that, a lot of people have very differing opinions on what films they consider to be the best in the franchise and what they consider to be the worst. So hopefully you'll find my ranking interesting, and yeah, I would love to see your rankings as well, so please feel free to leave them in the comments below. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So in last place, I am going to go with Leatherface. So this is the 2017 prequel, which I believe goes furthest back in terms of timeline, and shows Leatherface as a young boy. When the film begins, we see him as a very, very young boy, and something happens at the beginning of the film which causes him to go to a mental institution. The film then shifts quite a few years later, and he, along with a group of other people from the institution, break out and essentially go on the run. The catch with this film is that when all of these kids escape from the asylum, you don't actually know which one of them Leatherface is, and I thought that might have been a really interesting angle for the film to go with, but in the end it kind of dispenses with that. The film doesn't really feel like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. It feels more along the lines of, I'd say, natural born killers. There's two characters in particular, a boy and a girl, they're very sadistic, they love causing chaos, they love causing violence, and they're on the run, and that's where the natural born killers angle kind of comes from. And yeah, also when we find out which one of the characters is Leatherface, it just didn't really sit right with me. I kind of feel like the creators of this film didn't really understand the character, and yeah, the twist doesn't quite work. I won't really spoil much else, but yeah, it didn't quite work for me. Also, it just has a very cheap TV movie kind of feel to it. A lot of the other characters in the movie, like the police force characters, for instance, they're meant to be the good guys, but a lot of them are very unlikable, and it's hard to kind of get on their side. And yeah, it's not a movie that really worked for me, and like I said, it just doesn't really feel like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. So yeah, that's Leatherface in 9th place. So in 8th place, I'm going to go with Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Now, this is a movie that has one of the best teaser trailers I have ever seen. It is such a fantastic trailer, but it doesn't bode well for the movie when I like the trailer more than the movie. The problem I have with this film is that I've seen it maybe 4 or 5 times, and every time I watch it, I just instantly forget what happened in it. This movie is just so bland and so forgettable, and it does have a good performance. I can't remember the actor's name, but it does have a good performance from the guy who plays Leatherface. You've also got Ken Foree in there, who's obviously legendary in terms of Dawn of the Dead, Kenan and Kel, things like that. And you've got a very young Viggo Mortensen in there. But honestly, for me, they just can't save this film. It doesn't look like it was filmed in Texas. I think they filmed it in California, and I think you can tell. All the deserts in it, they look like California deserts. It doesn't look at all like Texas. And yeah, I mean, it's not a bad film per se, but it's just so forgettable, and for that reason, I can't really put it any higher than in 8th place. So yeah, that's Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 in 8th place. So in 7th place, I'm going to go with Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, or The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think is the other title for it. This is a film that is considered by many to be the worst in the franchise. And I can agree with that. I mean, I can understand that for sure. The reason why this one is a little bit higher than the other two is because, well, it's just a bit more memorable. Some of the decisions in this film were very bizarre, especially in terms of plot. I know some of the things in the film involving the Illuminati and secret societies kind of being involved with the family is a bit of a strange one, maybe a little bit misguided and not done very well, but it was an interesting angle to go with. It's great seeing Matthew McConaughey in the film and Renée Zellweger. Obviously, they were unknown when they made this film, but these days we all know who those actors are. And it's good seeing this film and seeing them in it, knowing the actors that they are now. And yeah, they're probably one of the few saving graces in the film. But yeah, like I say, it's not a very good film, but I do think it has just a little bit more to say than the previous two that I've already mentioned. It's not great, but it's okay. So in sixth place, I'm going to go with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D. Now, I'm just going to address the elephant in the room with this film. The timeline issues are, they're awful, and I don't know how, the director, the writers, everyone involved in this film, I don't know how they thought they could get away with that, because the timeline issues are really, it's a really major issue with the film, and it really badly affects the film. But if you can kind of get past that and just enjoy the film for what it is, it's actually not that bad, and it's actually kind of fun. Leatherface in it is, very, very scary. It kind of brings back some of the intensity to the franchise, which had maybe been missing for a while. And yeah, it's all I can really say is it's a fun movie. It's not a masterpiece, but it is just a lot of fun. There's some good gore effects in there. There's some tense moments. Some of the CGI blood and some of the 3D effects are maybe not that great, but if you can just enjoy the film for what it is and ignore some of those issues, some of the issues with the story and the timeline, then it's actually not that bad. And I don't think it's as bad as a lot of other people say, because I know this film is considered to be one of the worst of the franchise. And yeah, it's not a great film, but it's an enjoyable one. So in fifth place, I'm going to go with the latest film in the franchise, which is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So yeah, this is the film that was released by Netflix very recently, and all I can really say about this film is it's fine. It's probably the most middle-of-the-road entry in the entire franchise. It doesn't reach the heights of the best films in the franchise, but it doesn't stoop to the lows either. It's a very brisk, well-paced horror movie with plenty of gore, violence, some fun moments, and for that you can't really argue with it. I did have issues with the story. I thought the story was kind of vague, non-existent. I found a lot of the characters in it not very likable, so I was kind of happy to see a lot of them get their comeuppance. I thought the way they brought Sally Hardesty back into the film was a bit strange. I thought a lot of her moments just didn't really make sense, and I won't spoil it, but what happens to her character at the end of the movie is kind of laughable, kind of corny. I think that moment was probably it was probably meant to sort of make you cheer, but it made me laugh instead, which is not really a good sign. But if you can sort of ignore the story and the character aspect, then the film is actually, it's fun. Like I said, it's a very short, fast-paced movie with plenty of gore and violence, all that kind of good stuff. And if that's all you want from a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, then, I think it will deliver. Like I said, I don't think it's one of the best. I don't think it's one of the worst. It's just, it falls right in the middle for me. But yeah, that's Texas Chainsaw Massacre at number 5. So in fourth place, I'm going to go with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. So this film is a prequel to the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, which I will come to shortly. The issue I have with this film is that because it's a prequel to the 2003 film, it kind of lacks tension. No matter what way you look at it, I think you know how this film is going to end because it is a prequel and it's setting up, the events that are, and it's setting up the family. And yeah, it just lacks that suspense and the tension that we want from the film. It's also a very, very dark, mean-spirited, nihilistic movie. It's definitely a movie that you have to be in the mood for watching. If all you want to see is like bloodshed and carnage and, people suffering, then, this will be the movie for you. But if you want something that's going to be a bit more hopeful, then you should probably steer clear of this movie. I do have a hard time watching it because, the movie doesn't really have anything else to say other than, to basically answer some questions that people may have had from the 2003 film. But other than that, this film doesn't really have a reason to exist. Having said that, I think it does feel the closest in tone to maybe the original film. I think they did kind of, get that tone quite right. I think Andrew Briniarski is absolutely fantastic as Leatherface. And we've also got Arlie Ermy in there, who is a fantastic actor, and he is very, very intense in this movie as Sheriff Hoyt. Really, really horrible character, but it's just a testament to the actor's performance as him. He's just fantastic. So this film does have some positives, but like I said, it's one of those films you have to be in the mood in. And, if you don't want to see characters suffering and with no hope, then I would steer clear from this movie. But other than that, it's pretty decent. Right, so I'm into the top 3 now, and this for me is where the quality of the films does increase. But yeah, in third place, I'm going to go with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So yeah, this is a film that I've had a bit of an odd history with. I remember the first time I saw this, I was probably about 12 years old. I had just seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and obviously I wanted to see more. And when I put this film on, I remember being just so perplexed by it because tonally it is so different to the original film. And I know that is a sore point for, some fans of the franchise. I think this film is probably, could be the most controversial film in the whole franchise. I know there are people who love this movie, and I know there are people who absolutely hate it. I kind of fall somewhere in the middle, but overall I do really like this film. I think it's got a fantastic music score, very, very demented sounding score, and a very underrated one at that. It's got a very, wacky, crazy tone. It's very entertaining. Maybe not as scary or as horrific as some of the other films in the franchise, but it's still a lot of fun. The only issue I possibly have with this film is that I think the pacing of it can be a little bit off at times. At 100 minutes long, I think this film is the longest in the franchise, and I know that isn't very long for a film, but I think for a horror film, I think the shorter they are, the better they are. And I do think this film could have maybe benefited from 10 minutes at least being cut out, and I think it would have flowed a lot better. I do think there are parts in this movie that do kind of slow down and slow the film down kind of unnecessarily. But that's a minor issue, really. Overall, I still have a lot of fun with this movie. But yeah, that's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 at number 3. In second place, I'm going to go with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2003 remake. If you'd have asked me when I was a teenager what my favourite Texas Chainsaw Massacre film was, I would have probably said this film. I remember as a teenager when I wanted to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I would always, 9 out of 10 times, opt for this film. Yeah, I just think it is one of the better horror remakes that we got from the 2000s. I think it kind of, it takes the original film and does something similar, but, just kind of intensifies a lot of it. I find this movie very, very creepy in places, very, very tense, intense, I would say, and, you kind of biting your nails a lot of the time through the movie. There's some just really horrific moments. Again, Andrew Briniarski as Leatherface he is fantastic. He is a brilliant Leatherface, and his Leatherface is probably he's probably one of the last people I would want to be cornered in a room by. He is absolutely terrifying in this movie. Arlie Ermy again as Sheriff Hoyt, a fantastic character. And yeah, I just think overall this film is very, very intense, very gory, but a lot of really suspenseful moments. All of the characters in it are really likable. You know, all the teenager characters, they're all great. You want to see them get through this nightmare that they're going through. And yeah, I mean, this film does get a lot of hate. Personally, I don't really get it. I think it's a great movie. I mean, I guess if you're comparing it to the original film, that I can maybe understand the criticisms, but on its own, I think it is one of the better horror remakes that we got, certainly from like the 2000s onwards. And yeah, I just have a great time every time I watch this movie. But yeah, that's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2003 remake, at number 2. So yeah, we're into first place, and if you haven't guessed it already, it is of course the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, directed by Tobe Hooper. Yeah, I don't really need to say too much about this movie. I know I said previously that for a long time I preferred the remake, but as I've gotten older and I've watched this film more and more, I can really understand and appreciate the quality of this film. It's just a fantastic movie, very raw, very low budget, but tonally it's just, you know, it can't be matched. It's just a fantastic low budget horror film. Leatherface in it, Gunnar Hansen, fantastic. When we first see his character in the movie, when he sort of, he hits the guy with the hammer and he drags him inside and he slams that metal door, that scene gives me chills every time. Just unbelievable. And then from then on, the film just becomes very, very intense. You feel dirty after you've watched this film. You feel like you need to take a shower. You're thinking about this movie long after it's over. And when a film has that kind of effect on you, you know the film has done its job in one way or another. And that final scene at the dinner table, I mean, I don't need to say too much, just what an amazing scene. And that last shot of Leatherface, just spinning around, wielding his chainsaw, and then the film just suddenly cuts and it's done. Just amazing. It's a fantastic film, and obviously none of the other films that I've mentioned can beat it. It's just an absolute classic, mainstay horror movie, and one of the best we've ever had. So yeah, that's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, in first place. So there you go, guys. That is my ranking for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. And like I said before, if you've got your own rankings, then please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I would love to see them, and I would love to see any differences we might have. But yeah, I will leave the video there, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would be absolutely fantastic, and it would mean the world to me. But yeah, other than that, I will hopefully see you guys on the next one. So take care, guys.